Right. We're in Holbrook, Arizona today, and we're on the way back from the West Coast. But on the way out, we listened to Burglary, the Hidden F.B.I. Now documentary about burglary in Media, Pennsylvania, which revealed that the FBI did a disproportionate amount of work trying to monitor what they called subversive organizations. Anyway, during the listening to that book, Alex and I had an opportunity to reflect on Pop, my father's career with the FBI. And it started, his career started the day after the inauguration of Franklin Delano Roosevelt for his third term. In other words, sometime in January 1941. He retired, Dad retired in I think 1965, pretty close to that year.
Right.
And he was a senior resident agent in resident agency in Madison. In the book Burglary, the Media, Pennsylvania office was a resident agency. They had 5 or 6 agents, as they did in Madison. And they didn't have a secretary. They locked their office up at night. And the field offices, the FBI field offices are in larger cities. Madison was a resident agency. Milwaukee was the field office.
Which was Philadelphia in the case of.
Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. And the person in charge of the field offices was the special agent in charge, SAC. But Pop was an SRA, senior resident agent. So if something were to go wrong as a result of anything in the Madison agency, then Pop would take the blame for it. The FBI had a system of disciplining its employees or its special agents, often by transferring them rather than firing them. And in the Media, Pennsylvania case, the senior resident agent, I think his name was Lewis.
Tom Lewis?
Tom Lewis. He was transferred to Atlanta. Foolishly, as it turns out, because during the follow-up investigation of the burglary, he was not on hand to do, among other things, an inventory of what was stolen. After Hoover died in 1972, one of the first acts of the new director was to bring Lewis back from Atlanta to the Philadelphia office. Anyway, to get back to Pop, he told me that this system of transferring agents who made mistakes or who were to be blamed for mistakes made him realize that he had a safety valve of sorts. I called it a black feather, like Dumbo's black feather. Pop said that if he were to make a big mistake in Madison, he might be transferred to what most people considered a very undesirable place like Fargo, North Dakota. And if that were the case, he would say, well, as long as you're going to send me to Fargo, you might as well send me to New York City. And New York City was apparently very hard to keep staffed with FBI agents. People didn't want to work there. But Pop had grown up in New York City and had a level of comfort with it which would allow him to go back there without trouble. Now, maybe that was all imaginary, but I think because he felt not threatened by a possible transfer, it freed him up to do what he wanted. An example.
Well, so he did get. You did have a letter in his file that he was reprimanded at least once for spying on the run.
When I looked at his papers after he died, and I've kept this one. It's a letter from J. Edgar Hoover, and it's a letter of reprimand, pointing out that the stakeout that Pop had arranged suspect was at the wrong address, and so that had been a waste of time and energy.
But they didn't transfer it.
No, that was not a serious enough one to warrant a
Yeah,
transfer.
other than that, he did fairly good,
Well,
job
he
for
also
Hoover.
said in connection with this disciplinary mode, he said that one of the characteristics of the FBI, and I could tell that he disagreed with this, but he said that Hoover ran the FBI on a wartime basis. It's as though we're at war, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You got to be able to go, and in addition to which there were innumerable regulations, so many that Popov said he would always be in violation of something because some of the rulings were contradictory. You could not follow all of the regulations.
Well, it's in the book we're talking about, for example, they're supposed to find African American informants and have certain ones. And the guy in there in the book says, he made example, I just picked names out of the phone book and made up reports.
That's an example of how
Hoover was.
what you have to do to survive when there's too many regulations. This agent in media, or in the book about media, simply picked a name out of the phone book and named that person as an informant. What I did learn from listening to the media Pennsylvania book Burglary is what the initials PSI stand for. Popov would dictate letters or reports, which would then be typed in the field office in Milwaukee. He would often dictate those at home, so his papers would be on a card table in the living room, and then he would dictate, and I would hear him, and Mona would hear him use the phrase PSI. And Mona said to him one day, "Pop, what does PSI stand for?" And my dad laughed and